The new Michael Jackson documentary, The Verdict, on Netflix has sparked a massive reaction. Fans are calling for a Netflix boycott. The innocent glove image is flooding social media, and many are speculating that the documentary played a role in the company's recent stock dip. The timing has people talking. The Michael biopic is still in theaters, bringing longtime supporters and newer audiences together to celebrate his legacy. Then, right in the middle of that, Netflix releases a documentary focused on the very subject the movie reportedly had to leave out because of a legal clause.
Judge is still reading the verdicts. I'm being told the judge is still reading over the verdict forms. And the courtroom, I'm being told, is absolutely silent, which pretty much mirrors what's happening outside the courthouse. It is absolutely silent out here as everybody waits for word to see which way this jury has decided.
So I watched all 3 episodes, and they cover the entire 2005 trial. Even though Michael was found not guilty, the documentary presents a version of events that strongly suggests he escaped accountability for abusing children. But then I looked into the actual court documents and testimonies that weren't highlighted. The story Netflix tells isn't quite as straightforward as it appears. In the documentary, the Arvizo family is portrayed as victims, a struggling family, a sick child, and a global superstar who allegedly took advantage of them. But the court records describe a far more complicated picture. According to testimony and defense arguments from the case, the family had faced previous accusations involving deceptive behavior before meeting Michael. Before getting into the Arvizos, though, we have to start with the man who set this entire case in motion. Martin Bashir is the British journalist behind Living with Michael Jackson, released in 2003. It's the documentary where Michael is shown holding hands with Gavin Arvizo and speaking about children sleeping in his room. That broadcast became a major factor in the events that eventually led to the 2005 trial. Netflix brings Bashir back, lets him explain how he met Michael, and presents him as the journalist who finally gained his trust. The documentary also points out that Bashir interviewed Princess Diana in 1995, a moment that made him internationally famous and helped build his credibility. But it leaves out a major controversy. In 2021, a BBC investigation concluded that Bashir used fake bank statements, created with the help of a graphic designer, to convince Diana's brother that people close to her were being paid to spy on her. Those documents helped him secure the interview that launched his career. So this is the man whose earlier documentary helped trigger the case against Michael. Critics have argued that Bashir built trust first, then shaped the final story in ways his subjects never expected.
Jury clearly has told the prosecution this was a case you probably should not have brought. The little boy's credibility was probably non-existent to this jury, coupled with the mother who offered testimony that bordered on the bizarre.
But Bashir only made the documentary that set everything in motion. He isn't the one guiding viewers through the trial. For that, Netflix turns to reporters who covered the case in 2005, day by day, relying heavily on one journalist whom Michael's supporters have accused of targeting him since 1993.
Slam dunk against the prosecution. Jeffrey Toobin, I think it's fair to say a lot of people are going to be very, very surprised.
A lot of people are going to be surprised, and you don't need a law degree to understand this verdict. It is an absolute and complete victory for Michael Jackson, utter humiliation and defeat for Thomas Snedden, the district attorney.
Her name is Diane Diamond, and one of the biggest stories she reported about Michael involved a videotape she told audiences was believed to show him engaging in misconduct with a child. The problem? No such tape was ever produced. The claim traced back to a single source, Victor Gutierrez, who said he had seen it. Demond repeated those allegations on national television and radio, reporting that investigators were closing in on Michael. Michael later sued her for defamation but did not win. The court found that she had been reporting on an allegation rather than definitively stating it as fact. Even so, critics argue that the damage to Michael's public image had already been done. Netflix now uses Diamond as one of the documentary's key voices, presenting her as an experienced journalist with deep knowledge of the case. Supporters of Michael question that choice, arguing that some of her past reporting included personal interpretations alongside factual coverage. They also point to stories from her book, including an account involving Michael in a Las Vegas hotel, as examples they believe lacked convincing support. That raises a bigger question for viewers. Can a documentary be seen as balanced if some of its most prominent commentators are viewed by critics as having strong pre-existing opinions? The reporters are only part of the story, because Netflix also leans heavily on people who participated in the trial itself, including a prosecutor who sought to put Michael behind bars. But as we're about to see, critics argue he had a conflict that Netflix never addresses. Ron Zonen was one of the lead prosecutors in the 2005 case, working directly under the district attorney, and he's one of the documentary's main guides through the trial. During the family's trust before crossing boundaries, he says, "Okay now that you love me, now let's go to bed." That's one of the perspectives Netflix chooses to spotlight as it tells this story. Now let's talk about the claims themselves, because having a narrator with a point of view is one thing, but the verdict also presents certain stories in a way that can feel like hard evidence. One example involves Vincent Amon, a former publicist connected to Michael through his assistant, Frank Cassio. Amon says that after the Neverland raid, Frank gave him a bag containing items from the ranch. Inside, he claims, was a naturist magazine with a mail order section advertising videos featuring nudist families, with several listings circled. According to Amon, seeing that magazine completely changed how he viewed Michael and made him believe something inappropriate may have been happening. But there are details the documentary doesn't fully explore. The magazine was never tested for fingerprints and was never introduced as evidence during the trial. It also wasn't recovered directly from Michael's home. According to Amon's account, it came from a bag provided by Frank Cassio, and no one has publicly established who circled those listings. Investigators involved in the 1993 and 2003 searches also never reported finding the videos mentioned in those advertisements. In the end, this account relies largely on Amon's recollection and his claim about where the magazine came from. Critics argue that viewers should weigh that context for themselves. The Cassio family spent decades publicly defending Michael, but today some members are involved in legal disputes with the Jackson estate seeking millions of dollars. Critics point to that shift and question their credibility. The documentary also highlights that investigators found a collection of adult magazines during the Neverland raid. It wasn't the same magazine Vincent Amon described, and nothing in the collection was illegal. Still, prosecutors focused heavily on one detail, a magazine that reportedly contained both Michael's fingerprints and the accuser's fingerprints. Their argument was, "See, this proves it. Michael sat there and he showed it to the kids." But there were complications. Multiple staff members testified that the Arvizo children sometimes went through Michael's belongings when he wasn't present. A fingerprint can show that someone touched an item, but it doesn't establish how or when it happened. It neither confirms nor disproves the allegations. Yet critics argue the documentary presents that evidence with more certainty than the trial record supports. To strengthen its broader narrative, the documentary also revisits the 1993 allegations involving Jordan Chandler. One of the biggest talking points is the civil settlement, with the suggestion that innocent people don't pay large sums unless they're hiding something. But civil settlements don't determine criminal guilt. The Chandler matter involved a civil lawsuit seeking financial damages, and resolving that case could not stop a criminal investigation from moving forward. Paying a settlement may influence public opinion, but it isn't proof of guilt on its own. The documentary repeatedly returns to older controversies, leading into one of its most uncomfortable claims yet.
Talking about children, we met Gavin, and it was a great privilege to meet Gavin because he's had a lot of suffering in his life.
Yeah.
When Gavin was there, he talked about the fact that he shares your bedroom.
Yes.
Can you understand why people would worry about that?
Because they're ignorant.
Investigators photographed Michael's body as part of an effort to compare it with the description Jordan Chandler had reportedly given. In the documentary, it suggested that the descriptions matched. But what viewers aren't told is that early media reports, citing law enforcement sources, claimed the descriptions did not match.
I have been here for 8 months. I have been here for 8 months, yes ma'am. I have been here for 8 months so I can support the living king, Michael Jackson. He's been wrongfully accused. and I believe he's innocent. And he will.
If Jordan Chandler's description was truly an exact match, why did some early reports citing law enforcement sources suggest otherwise? And if the evidence was that clear, why wasn't an arrest made at the time? Even more importantly, why present such a contested point in the documentary as if there's no debate around it? Those are some of the major claims the verdict leans on, and critics argue they don't hold up as strongly as the documentary suggests. But the real focus of this story isn't just the evidence, it's the Arvizo family. The documentary portrays them as a struggling single mother, a sick child, and a family exploited by a wealthy celebrity. Yet it also includes incidents that critics say complicate that image. One involved a dispute with J.C. Penney in 1998 that resulted in a lawsuit settlement, followed by later welfare fraud charges involving the mother. Netflix deserves credit for mentioning that history, but supporters of Michael argue it wasn't the full picture. According to testimony and accounts surrounding the case, Michael wasn't the first celebrity the Arvizos had become connected to. Before meeting him, they allegedly had encounters with other high-profile figures, including comedians Chris Tucker and George Lopez. And that's the part Netflix never really digs into.
What's wrong with sharing love? You don't sleep with your kids or some other kid who needs love, who didn't have a good childhood?
No, I don't. I would never dream of sleeping.
I would.
I would never dream.
Because you've never been where I've been mentally.
Chris Tucker, trying to do a good deed, felt sympathy for Gavin and welcomed the family into parts of his world. He took them on trips and to theme parks, but things reportedly started getting strange. They showed up on the set of Rush Hour 2, wouldn't leave, and the kids were said to be disruptive during filming.
A special good evening tonight to our viewers joining us on the West Coast, especially in Los Angeles, where we're getting live pictures of the helicopter about to take off from UCLA Medical Center bearing the body of Michael Jackson on its way to the coroner.
It reportedly got to the point where Chris Tucker was asked not to bring the family around anymore. According to testimony, he began feeling like he was being manipulated, with conversations repeatedly centering on Gavin's illness and requests for additional help. Chris later testified during the 2005 trial, telling the jury that Gavin seemed unusually cunning and sophisticated for someone his age. And Chris Tucker wasn't the only one with that impression. George Lopez reportedly had a very similar experience.
And a lot will be said about Michael Jackson starting tonight and over the coming days. He was incredibly talented, a child star at first, who as an adult was a deeply troubled man with mental and physical health issues.
Now, setting the family's history aside, the timeline of the allegations raises questions that critics say are hard to ignore. Living with Michael Jackson aired in February 2003, showing Michael holding hands with Gavin and speaking about sleepovers. The reaction was immediate, and the story exploded worldwide. Child Services opened a case, police began investigating, and the FBI became involved. Yet in the middle of all that attention, the family recorded a video publicly defending Michael.
Are you surprised with the verdict?
Oh, surprise! No! No! I always believed in him. I would not have came here if I thought Michael Jackson was guilty of these crimes. I believed in him, and I fought for him.
But according to the prosecution's own timeline, the alleged abuse began after the documentary controversy erupted, when the entire world was watching and investigations were already underway. Critics argue that sequence of events simply doesn't add up. The jury raised similar concerns. When explaining the not guilty verdict, jurors pointed to the timeline as one of the factors that made the prosecution's case difficult for them to accept.
When you sign up and you come into agreement, which you hear or not, you gone, and they still capitalizing off of your name. Y'all still want to be famous, rich and famous? Baby, y'all can have it.
Over the course of the documentary, viewers hear from Diane Dimond and prosecutor Ron Zonin again and again, creating the impression that serious mistakes were made and somehow slipped through the cracks. Critics argue that the strongest voices guiding the story are also some of the people with the deepest ties to the original case and the strongest opinions about Michael. Overall, the verdict presents itself as balanced by including figures like Michael's security guard and family attorney. But supporters of Michael believe the narration is driven largely by people they view as conflicted or personally invested in revisiting a trial that ended with acquittals. Michael is gone, and many fans feel it's time to let his legacy rest. That said, I wouldn't tell people to boycott it. Watch it for yourself and decide. Despite what critics describe as omissions or misinterpretations, there are emotional moments, including scenes of fans outside the courthouse and people who stood by Michael sharing their memories. Let me know what you think in the comments. Should Netflix have released this documentary? Did it change your mind, or did it raise more questions? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more breakdowns. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.